I heard that you started a pyramid scheme.
That's good research. I did start a pyramid scheme. This was when I was like,
Can you explain what a pyramid scheme is?
So a pyramid scheme is basically where you try and sell something to someone, but you tell them that they have to sell the thing to 2 other people if they want the thing. And then they have to tell those 2 other people that they have to sell it to 2 other people if they want the thing. And eventually, in theory, the person at the top gets rich. I did not realize this at the time, that this was a pyramid scheme. But I had an idea for making money, which was that, at the time, I think the Xbox 360 had come out. So I was like 14 or 15. And there were all these websites promising that, these ads, like shoot the duck and get a free games console. And I was like, how does that work? And then I started looking into this and I realized that, these are all based on this thing called affiliate marketing. So like you could make a website where, so like on these websites, you would shoot the duck and then it would say, okay, you need to sign up for a free trial of Blockbuster Video or like Love Film. These were like the pre-Netflix kind of streaming sites.
Yeah.
You need to sign up to a free trial and then you need to get 25 of your friends to sign up for free trials. And if you just do that, you'll get a free Xbox 360. And I was like, okay. So I tried this out and I was like, well, I don't have 25 friends to sign up to a free trial of this because it needed a credit card. And, at the time, very few of my friends had actual credit cards. But I thought, this is an interesting concept. What if I just built the website and just made it look less scammy than, the ones that were out there? So basically the idea was, I built a website, got these affiliate partnerships. I got my friends to sign up for free accounts, free trials for Blockbuster. And then the idea was they would refer 25 other people. In reality, this did not work. One of my friends, Godwin, he had 4 sisters who were all older than him. So he got 4 of their credit cards, signed up to 4 free trials for Love Film at the time. And I remember I was on a school trip and my mum randomly rang me and she was like, you've got this weird looking check in the mail. And I was like, what's weird about it? She was like, it's a check for £50. And I was like, okay. But it's like an electronic check where it sort of like says 0 millions, 0 hundred thousands, 0 10,000s. And it's sort of at the end, it's like tens times 5. So it was like an automated printed check. And I was like, whoa. That's the 50 quid that I got from 4 times £12.50 signups because Godwin signed up to a free trial of the Love Film thing and got his sisters to sign up for it. And that was the moment that I realized I could make money without it being tied to my time. Because before, like age 12 to 15, I had to make a website for someone for them to pay me. But I made the website already and it was just sort of ticking along in the background. And then my mate did something and then I got paid for it. And I was like, whoa, you can build a website where you don't, it's not, I realized that this sort of time and money wasn't correlated. And that was like a big like unlock to be like, hang on, this pyramid scheme thing isn't really going to work, but like, this is a cool concept.
It's so strange that you followed that road into medicine because it's just not what you were doing. In my spare time, I was going to do plays and acting, and that's what I was doing. And so therefore I wanted to go into entertainment. In your spare time, you were coding, making pyramid schemes and creating businesses, creating money. But then you still go down the road of becoming a doctor. There must have been pressure from the family for you to do that. There must have been this idea of you need to go and get a normal job because the jobs that you were doing on the side, they weren't normal. They had no security behind them. And you must have had that typically like nervous aspect, which we all have, which is where we need security. And if we don't have security, then it's too much for us. Did you have that? Because you're a risk taker, but also you're not at the same time. You're a huge risk taker.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty risk averse. Like it didn't even occur to me that I could choose to not go to university. Like that wouldn't have been an option. I mean, I guess I wanted to go to university. I wanted to go to Oxford or Cambridge. Like that was always the aspiration. And so the only real choice was, do I do computer science or do I do medicine? Because this stuff all vibed with computer science because it was building software, building websites. But like around age 16 where I had to pick GCSEs, I decided it's more interesting to be a doctor who knows how to code than it is to be a random guy who knows how to code.
Why? Because it gives you a different edge?
Yeah, it gives you a different edge. I thought, okay, what if I get really good at medicine and become a surgeon or something, but I also know how to build tech products on the side? Now, maybe that's an intersection where in the future I'll be able to make some sort of medical device or invent some sort of surgical instrument or something like that. That was in the back of my mind.
Do you think, I love talking about naivety because I always think if I knew now what it takes to build a sweet company, I wouldn't do it. Like because you know what the margins, what it takes, you know how many years it's going to take to even build a brand, especially a product-based brand, especially something in FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, right? Do you think that now that you're not that naive, you take less risks because you know how long it takes to build something?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think that's very true. Now that our business has been going for the last like seven years now with the YouTube channel. So now for me to do something, it feels like there's pressure on it because it will be a public failure if I don't do the thing well.
But why does that matter?
I don't know. I think back when no one knew who I was, it felt like, oh, I could just try stuff. Now it feels like if I'm putting my name to it, the thing has to actually be good. And so it becomes a much slower process to launch anything. Whereas before I was like, I was shooting from the hip. But now I like don't like shooting from the hip because I'm always like, we've got a good thing going. I don't want to screw things up. But then also it's like, back in the day, if I could make an extra $2,000 a month, I'd be over the moon because that would have allowed me to go part-time in medicine. Now, candidly, unless it's making at least 100K a month, it's just not worth anyone in my team's time because our business is big enough that we just don't bother with things that are going to make less money than that. And so then we're like doing all these calculations to be like, okay, we've got this cool idea, but is the idea at least 100K a month or at least $1 million a month or something like that for it to be even worth considering? And there's a fun quote that I came across, which is that there are so many $1 million businesses that are just waiting to be started that people who run $10 million businesses or $100 million businesses just are not going to bother with. And so if you're someone who's an aspiring entrepreneur, there's so much opportunity in those kind of spaces where someone who's already got a big business is just not going to bother because it's just not worth their time. But it's worth your time if you're, if you've got a job and you want to be an entrepreneur, for example. I
find it so interesting how you're really open about what money the company's making. Why are you so open with that? Especially with money, people are very silent about it.
Yeah, I think in my early days when I was getting into this stuff, I really benefited from other people being open about it. So there's a guy called Pat Flynn, a guy called Graham Stephan. These guys would do like monthly or annual income reports where I'd be like, wait a minute, this guy's making $450,000 a year from an affiliate partnership with this random software. What the hell is going on there? Or like, bloody hell, this guy, Graham Stephan, he makes videos about finance and he's making $7,000 a day from YouTube AdSense. What the fuck? That's so cool. And so it was seeing things like that made me realize I should really take this YouTube thing a lot more seriously, or I should look into affiliate partnerships. When, the numbers for my stuff started to be interesting, when I started to make more money from YouTube than I did from medicine, I thought, you know what? Why don't I turn this into like an annual video series where every year I'll just do a bit of an income report. So I did that for about 5 years. I've stopped now because the numbers are A, kind of insane, and B, I'm sort of looking to get married and have kids, and it starts to have issues of like security and stuff. And there are people that are way richer than I am, but like it's like a level of risk that I kind of don't want to deal with anymore, to be so public, at least on my YouTube channel, about like revenues and stuff.
But this is for the business. But is it 10 plus million?
Oh no, we're at 5 million last year.
You were 5 million last year?
Yeah, we're going for 10 million this year or next year.
Amazing.
Our target for this year is like 7, but I really want to go for 10 because I think it's just fun.
How many employees?
13.
13 full-time employees.
Yeah.
Do you feel pressure now because before it was just you were just doing it. You didn't have to worry about anyone else whatsoever, but now you have 30 other lives to look after. And I think a lot of the time young entrepreneurs don't realize that. There's a very exciting thing about going into business because, oh my God, I'm going to build this YouTube channel, build this brand, or build this sweet company, whatever it is. But you forget about everyone else who you take on that journey with you. First, you have to make them believe in your passion, your dream, and your desire. And how do you do that? Because that's creating culture. But secondly, it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. I do feel the pressure, especially in January, where our accounts go to zero again because we have no recurring revenue. And so it's like, crap, we're going to spend 2 million this year on like team salaries and expenses and stuff. So we better make at least 2 million. But like in January, the scoreboard starts at 0 and the expenses are going to be 2 million. And so it sort of feels as if we're in the red for a long time. And then like last year around, I don't know, May or something, we crossed the 2 million threshold. And I was like, oh, phew, at least we're profitable this year. And then all the rest was profit. But it does feel like a bit of a pressure. It's a nice pressure, It's
a great pressure.
It's a certainly.
You enjoy pressure though as well.
Yeah, I do in a way. I think it's just really fun working with people as well. Like I know some entrepreneurs and YouTubers and stuff who will hire only freelancers in the Philippines because it's cheaper and it's like less of a personal connection. You can just fire them whenever you want. But it's like that's not really the business I want to run. I love having a team. I love working with people in person. And the whole point of a business is that it helps you make money while having fun and helping people. And if working with people in person means having more fun, then I'm happy to sacrifice some additional profit for that.
if someone wants to go and pick up your book, what would you say to them that they will get out of it?
Yeah, so I think what they'll get out of it is two things. One is like a general philosophy of productivity, which is that the secret to productivity is to make your work more fun, essentially, to make it feel good.
How do you do that?
That's the rest of the book. So, yeah, the whole book is basically about answering that question. How do you do that? How do you make work that is otherwise boring more fun? And so the first 3 chapters are the 3 Ps: play, power, and people.
Because this plays into culture, right, as well. And so, I had a statistic in America, right, that apparently 13% of Americans like their job, and actually, people in the workplace want to be congratulated and be told and have a good time, moreover being given a pay rise. I think, and you're so right. I think when people are having a good time, then everything else follows that way. But how do you encourage that in the workplace?
Yeah. So, yeah, the book is basically like how can you as an individual apply it to your own life? And then I guess managers reading the book have also found ways to incorporate that. So play, power, and people. Play is the first one. I think play is the most underrated productivity like hack out there. If you can just find a way to approach your work in the spirit of play, then it makes you more productive. So what does play mean? Play means when we're fully engaged in the task, but the stakes are low enough for it to feel playful. So, for example, when Roger Federer is playing, sort of defending his Wimbledon championship title, he's playing tennis, but he's not really playing. It's like the stakes are way too high for him to really feel playful about it. And so, like, with our work, if we can find a way to just, like, lower the stakes. Like, a lot of us have this thing, we take our work very seriously. And sure, that's fine. But there's a nice quote from Alan Watts, the philosopher, which is, you want to be sincere rather than serious. Like, no one wants to play a board game with someone who takes it too seriously, because they sort of suck the fun out of it. They suck the joy out of it. It's like, they're too much of a stickler for the rules. But we love to play games with people who play sincerely. We don't want to play with someone who's just like completely not asked about the whole thing, because that's kind of boring as well. You want to play with someone who's like giving it their all, but who recognizes at the end of the day that it's just a game.
But if you don't like your job, if you really aren't enjoying it, then how do you make it playful?
Yeah, so there's a guy I interviewed for the book. His name's Matthew, and he used to work at McDonald's. He didn't like his job at McDonald's. And I did an interview with him, and he came up with like some really cool stuff. So he found a way to make his job fun. So how does someone working at McDonald's who doesn't like their job make it more fun? So the way he incorporated play was that he was working in the drive-thru, and every day of the week would be a different sauce. Monday was barbecue sauce day, Tuesday was sweet and sour sauce, that kind of thing. And his challenge to himself, the way he made it fun, was that he was like, my mission on every Monday is to upsell every customer on barbecue sauce. On Tuesday, I'm going to upsell every customer on sweet and sour. And so when he'd have the conversations at the drive-thru, he'd be like, would you like fries with that? They'd be like, yes, please, no, thank you. And he'd be like, what about some barbecue sauce? I'd be like, no, I'm good, thanks. And then he'd be like, hey, are you sure? My last customer said, no thanks to the barbecue sauce. And then I talked her into it, and she was really happy. Are you sure you don't want the barbecue sauce? I'd be like, oh, fuck it, just give me the barbecue sauce. Why not? And
so you have a little achievement. He
had a little achievement. He's turning it into a bit of a game. He's adding a challenge to make this thing that's otherwise boring and miserable just a little bit more fun. And it was great for him because he enjoyed the job more. It's great for the customers because now they have like a fun, energizing interaction, because it's a bit unusual to be upsold barbecue sauce in the McDonald's drive-thru. And it's great for the franchise and the manager because the franchise is literally more productive. And so one way of incorporating play is, just ask yourself the question, what would this look like if it were actually fun? And you can just ask yourself that with anything. I literally have that on my phone as like a wallpaper. It's like a little post-it note that says, what would this look like if it were fun?
It actually does. That's hilarious.
And back when I was, before traveling, I had a computer monitor on my desk. I had a post-it note underneath that, literally saying, what would this look like if it were fun? And whenever I would feel, I've got to do this, taxes or whatever this thing is, admin, I would ask, what would this look like if it were fun? Okay, well, if it were fun, I wouldn't be sitting at my desk. I'd be going to the coffee shop downstairs. If it were fun, I'd be listening to music while I was doing it. If it was fun, I'd be like, you know what? I'll say to my housemate, hey, do you want to come and work in this coffee shop with me? Like, we both got admin to do. We can just sort of do it together. If it was fun, I don't know, maybe I'll make a list, and every time I tick it off, I'll do a little dance in my seat. Things like that. No matter how grim someone's job is, you can always ask yourself, what would this look like if it were fun? And with a bit of creativity, every single thing we do can be made just a little bit more fun. And that's one way of incorporating play. And people are like, well, fuck you, sometimes my job is really serious. And it's like, yeah, sure. I've been in plenty of operating theaters where there's life and death operations literally happening on the table. The patient is bleeding out and needs to be saved. The best surgeons in those contexts are the ones who can maintain lightness in the atmosphere. when the atmosphere is heavy and serious and stuff, like people make mistakes, like, the juniors and the nurses don't feel comfortable to speak up if the surgeon's operating on the wrong leg, for example. Bad things happen when the environment is too serious. But the best surgeons are the ones who can crack a joke every now and then. There's soft background music playing. Maybe their scrub cap is not just default blue, but it's like a funky color and it's got the name on it. And, just there's something about creating an atmosphere of lightness and ease, even when life and death is at stake, that makes everyone perform a little bit better.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. No one does their best work when it's like super serious. Everyone does their best work when it's like you're engaged, but there's a little bit of lightness. That's where creativity really flourishes.
What are the other P's?
The two other P's are power and people.
Talk about that.
So power is what we were talking about earlier, this sense of control. When we feel powerful in our jobs, when we feel like we have ownership, responsibility, and we're leveling up, that fuels something called intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the sort of motivation when you want to do something for its own sake. Like, I want to play football with my friends because it's fun. Like, that's intrinsic motivation. I want to play football with my friends because I might win a cash prize at the end of it is extrinsic motivation. That's the bad form of motivation. We tend not to enjoy being motivated by external things, but if we can find a way to motivate ourselves intrinsically, internally, that's generally a lot better. And so power is partly, how can I take more ownership and how can I level up? So the ownership piece, for example, this was in the book in my first draft, but we cut it out because it was too complicated. But essentially, what I realized was, like, again, back when I had a real job, weirdly, like, there were most days I would get home from the end of work and I would feel like completely drained. I wouldn't have any energy to like do my videos or like see my friends or whatever. I'd just sit on the couch and watch Netflix or scroll Instagram. But there were some days where I would get home from work and I'd feel really energized, and I'd feel like, oh, I've got a weird amount of energy today. Let me just do a video or work on the business or whatever. I try to figure out what's the difference between a draining day and an energizing day. And I realized after a while that when I was working on the weekends, that was weirdly energizing, which is kind of weird because weekend shifts, it's on a weekend. I can't see my friends because I'm working on a weekend. There's less staff around. So it's like I've got to do more work. There's more emergency, so it's more stressful. But why was it that the weekends were more energizing? I also realized that the other days that were energizing was when the senior doctors were off sick or if they were away on teaching or something. I was like, why is that? Like, there's less support. I'm having to do more work, but I'm more energized. What the hell's going on? And I realized it was because when it was a weekend, when they were off sick, I was taking more responsibility. On a normal weekday shift, there's enough doctors around. I was a little bit disengaged. I'm not proud to say it, but I was like, you know what? Everyone complains about the NHS. It's a bit boring. It's a bit shit. Like, I'm just an admin monkey. I'm just doing my job. But when the senior doctor wasn't there, I was stepping up. I was the one who was like following up the blood results and like speaking to the patient and making sure the family was updated. And I had all this stuff in my head because then I felt more responsible. And even though I was working harder and taking more responsibility, I got way more energy out of it. I got that sense of power. That drove intrinsic motivation. And that led me to realize, wait a minute, I don't need to wait for the weekends for this. I can just approach my work like this. And I had this realization about like 6 months in. And then all of a sudden, life became much more fun at work because I was just choosing to take responsibility. And the seniors loved it because they had less work to do and they were already stressed. The consultants loved it because now there's this junior doctor who's like actually knows stuff and can reel off the patient's blood results off the top of their head. The patients loved it because they're getting better care. And I loved it because I'm getting more energy and having more fun at work.
Do you know what's interesting? I had this in my GCSE maths exam.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not even kidding you. Like, I went into my GCSE year with maths and I was just didn't care about it, couldn't be bothered with it. And my mum said, I'll give you a bet. I'll bet you that you'll get a C in maths. I said, I'll bet you'll get an A. And she bet me like £100 or something. So firstly, that became a game. So exciting. And secondly, I realized that actually, so in every single class, I would then take the power almost. So the teacher would say, right, someone's going to lead the class today. And I'd always put my hand and say, right, I'm going to lead it today. And that gave me a sense of power as well. So not only did I have a sense of competition and power, that meant I then did really well. I got an A at the end of the year in my GCSEs because I added those elements to it.
Nice. That's so good.
What's the last P?
The last P is people. Generally, everything is more energizing and fun when you do it with other people around you because, we're social creatures and stuff. And, there's two ways to get the people element in your work. The first one is, like that thing I said, if you're doing something boring, try and do it in like a communal environment. Try and sort of get your friends together or your colleagues together to do the thing as like a bit of a group. At uni, I realized that studying on my own in my room was just depressing. But studying in the library with some friends around me, we're all doing different subjects, we're all doing different things. But we would all like do this, like the Pomodoro technique together. We would work for 25 minutes, then we take a 5-minute break, and we work for 25 minutes, 5-minute break. Then we go for a lunch, then we come back to the library. Just doing that made it way more enjoyable and energizing because you tap into the energy of the people around you. But the other way of doing it is to try and connect whatever you're doing to a sense of this might help someone else in some way. So if you feel like, oh, why am I doing this like boring admin thing? It's like, oh, my job sucks. It's like if you can try to really connect that to who is the person this will help. How will you make the customer smile? How is this going to make someone's life easier? That also weirdly gives us the sense of purpose, the sense that like we're getting more energy out of the thing.
Have you had burnout?
I think I've come close at various points.
What do you mean you came close though? Because you're such a positive person, and actually, burnout manifests itself in different ways. But typically, the one is where, and you see it a lot in medicine. Actually, loads of doctors and therapists, psychotherapists get it, where they just stop caring about the patients. They just lose all interest in it. You're the type of person I don't think would ever lose interest. So, what did your burnout nearly feel like?
Yeah, that's so for me. It's that feeling. It's when I lose interest in my work. Because for me, like making videos and doing podcasts and shit, it's really fun. I love tinkering with products on the weekends. But I know that I'm approaching burnout or at burnout when I feel like, oh, what's the point? Oh, it's just another podcast. Oh, it's just another video. Who gives a fuck? That kind of thing. That's when I'm like, hold up. That is a classic sign of burnout. Let's take a break. And I've started to recognize that a lot now. It's happened like a handful of times in the last like 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, okay, no more videos for the rest of the week. We just need to take a break. We need to realign.
That's so good.
Do some like vision planning and some journaling to really like sort of feel the sense of service and purpose and stuff. And then after about a week,
you have that great discipline. I don't have that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel it. How do you know, the final chapter of your book is you talk about overcoming burnout. How do you overcome burnout?
Yeah, so there's 3 types. There's a overexertion, depletion, and misalignment burnout. I think step 1 is to figure out which one is it.
And just quickly, I want to explain this. A lot of people just say, oh, I've got burnout. Until you have burnout, you don't know what burnout really is.
Yeah, I've got some friends who've really been through it, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. You literally couldn't get out of bed for like a whole 2 years. Fuck, damn, okay, fine.
That is, I experienced burnout. So beginning of lockdown, I had burnout. And the way that mine was is that I lost all interest in everything. Didn't have any interest in anything. I didn't want to do podcasting, didn't care about sweets, didn't care about the thought of playing, I don't know, any sport, like you say squash or whatever it was, or golf, I just didn't have any interest in anything. And it took me 8 months, 6 to 8 months to get
Damn.
And coming from someone who was so excited about life, and then all of that had gone. So the 3 burnouts, so you have to, what were they again, the 3 burnouts?
So overexertion, depletion, and misalignment. I wish I had simpler names for these, but so overexertion is when you're just trying to do too much.
Yeah.
Depletion is when you've been doing a lot and you haven't found time to recharge. And misalignment is where the thing that you're doing is just fundamentally not aligned with what you actually want. And however fun the thing is, when you feel misaligned, that's always a recipe for burnout eventually. So we can go into each of these in turn. So overexertion. Basically, one of the reasons I don't like to-do lists is because you can just put an infinite number of things on there. And there's a really cool, there's a fun story I came across when I was working actually. It was like my first week working in A&E in the emergency department. And I was like, I'd done a previous placement in cardiology and in elderly medicine, but this was my first week in emergency medicine, where the real stuff is, where the lives are saved. And so I walked in with a bit of a swagger. I was like, yeah, I'm going to save the lives. And I looked in the waiting room, and the waiting room was completely full of patients. I was like, whoa, shit, there's a lot of people here. I was like, yeah, I'm going to save the lives. So I went through the list. I saw like 8 patients that day. It took me about an hour to see each patient. And then on the way home, I looked in the waiting room. I was like, shit, it's still full. There's still too many patients in the waiting room. What the hell happened? And so the next day I was like, cool, going to save some more lives. I'm going to be more efficient with it. I'm going to like see 2 patients at once. I'm going to batch my calls to radiology. I'm going to do the bloods like very efficiently and stuff. And I saw maybe like 12 patients. So like on average, a patient every 45 minutes or something.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. And then on the way home, I looked in the waiting room. And it was still freaking full. It was still full of patients. I was like, what the hell? And this happened for a couple of days. And I mentioned this to one of the consultants. I was like, why does it seem as if the waiting room is always full? And he was like, oh, it's your first week, isn't it? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, so one thing that emergency medics realize very quickly is that the waiting room will never be empty. There will always be patients to see. I'm like, okay, so what do you do about that? He was like, the goal is not to think that you can get through all the patients. The goal is to triage. The goal is to show up every day as your best self and just see patients in order of priority. And as long as you and everyone else is doing that, everything will work out in the end. All we need to do is show up as our best selves and tackle the patients in order of priority, like a surgeon would on the battlefield. You triage. And that was really helpful advice for emergency medicine, but I think it's also helpful advice for life, because we all have a endless waiting room of projects and tasks and responsibilities and chores and things that you could be doing if you had more time. The waiting room will never be empty. And all we can do is show up as our best selves every day and just tackle things in order of priority. And so I think a lot of overexertion burnout is when people are just trying to do too much because there's always more to do. And there's this sense of you can have it all. You can just get, if only I worked a bit harder, I could get through everything. But what I find personally is that if you accept that you will never get through everything, there's something Oliver Burkeman talks about in his book, 4,000 Weeks. You're just never going to get through everything. Great. That's actually a liberating insight. That means every day you just focus on the one or two most important things, and then you take a break, and then you finish work, and then you start again. One or two most important things. One or two most important things. And if every single day you only did the one or two most important things and actually did them, you'd be making enormous amounts of progress, and you wouldn't be burned out. So a lot of it is just about recognizing, like, not taking on too much stuff, being better at saying no, something I struggle with, being better at taking breaks, all of that stuff.
It's amazing because what you have done, and I want to get into your whole story because, you grew up with a single mum. You go to Cambridge, you study medicine, you also do psychology. That's all kind of helping people.
Oh, that's some good research.
I am all over it, buddy. I am all over it. You then leave and you decide to put all of that behind you and you become a YouTuber. But the YouTuber is also about helping people. You have this innate desire to help people, it feels like.
Yeah, it was. So while I was working full time, when I had a real job, this was like 2019. I was in my sort of second year of being a doctor. And I started feeling a bit like lost and a bit like, I don't really know what I'm doing with my life. And as one does, I went on YouTube to find videos of like how to figure out what to do with your life. And I came across a really cool exercise called the Odyssey Plan, where, and I did this in 2019, where basically you sort of imagine your life 5 years from now, if you continue down your current path and you sort of write it out, and then you take a step back, and then you imagine life 5 years from now, if you took a completely different path. And then you take a step back, and then you imagine life 5 years from now if you took a different path, but you didn't care about making money, and you didn't care about what other people thought of you. And when I did that exercise in 2019, the current path that I was on, I realized, this is actually not what I want anymore. And that current path was continuing in medicine. I would have been training in anesthetics or in emergency medicine. I'd have been teaching physiology on the side at Cambridge. And it's like, that was what I'd been working towards, but I had just never really questioned that because it was just sort of the path that I was on. And that was this first realization of, maybe this path that I'm on is not actually what I want. And so then I worked with this like life coach guy, and he basically got me to go through my life and sort of write out all of the most meaningful moments. And there was a theme that emerged across all the meaningful moments, which was the theme of teaching. Like, I always enjoyed teaching people. I would always give seminars in med school to younger students just for free because it was fun. I built a business teaching medical students how to get into med school, and I did private tutoring and stuff. And I found that stuff really meaningful. And what this life coach guy said to me, he was like, it sounds like teaching is really your thing. And I was like, yeah, teaching is my thing. I think I want to be a teacher rather than a doctor.
It's interesting, right? That idea of a blueprint, right? It's kind of a scary. We had this blueprint in life, whatever it is. I want to be an actor, a musician, a doctor, whatever it is. And then suddenly when you either don't achieve your blueprint or you realize that your blueprint wasn't what you wanted to be and you want to be something different, that's a really kind of scary moment. Yeah. Because you're kind of like, you spent your whole life searching or going for this thing, and then you don't feel rewarded or satisfied when you get it. And I think social media now does that to people where I know you talk about this a lot, where social media it tells you that you need to be a millionaire before you're 20. You need to be an entrepreneur at 15. You need to be a tech bro, whatever it is, by the time you're 12. You need to be doing ice. Well, you're constantly comparing yourselves to one another. Yeah. So it kind of pushes that sense of we got to find our purpose now. Yeah. And it's really hard to understand what we want to do in life.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Until you start testing the waters. You tested it out. You had the ability to test it out and find out what you didn't really want to do. That's a great place to sort of find yourself, I think.
Yeah. I think also, like, a lot of us have this question of, I don't really know what I want to do. But then the next step of, let me Google it and find out or read some books where people have figured this out and do the journaling prompts to get some clarity on this. That's a step that I didn't take before 2019, even though I'd sort of been feeling this sense of, I feel a bit lost. And, you know, a lot of my kind of friends from med school and stuff, we were all talking about this feeling of like, yeah, we're not really sure what we want to do. But I don't know, there was something about that year where I just decided to search on YouTube for it and realized, oh, people have come up with answers to this. And
But how did you have the courage? What do you mean you felt lost?
I felt lost as in, that's a good question. What do I mean by feeling lost?
Because you're young,
Yeah.
you're you're succeeding, you're doing what you want to do. How do you know you're kind of going, well, hang on, are you not satisfied? What is it?
It was that when you're doing medicine or any kind of traditional career, there's like a yellow brick road laid in front of you. Like, okay, you just do this next thing. You know, you do your 2 years of foundation, and then you apply to specialist training. Then you do that for 7 years, and then at some point you get married and have kids, and then you become a consultant, and then you do that for 40 years, and then you die. Like, this is the yellow brick road that's laid out in front of medics, and I know that lawyers and, like, you know, a lot of different careers have that track laid out. And as I was on that path, I started feeling that sense of, is this really meaningful? Am I fulfilled by this? Is this really what I want to do? But at that point, I'd spent 7 years of sort of 6 years of med school and 2 years of work, working towards this identity, and like 3 years in school before then, doing the right GCSEs and A-levels. And so it's like, I think it was the feeling of lost, because it's like you're at that point and you've worked so hard to get here, and now you're here and you're like, is this really what I want? And then that feels quite destabilizing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had that at all in your career.
Oh my God, I've had that a lot. I've had that a huge amount, because also I've had it a lot because I did a reality show, and I did that for reasons because I thought, I've spoken about this before, but I thought thought some sort of fame would bring me all the riches and all the things that I wanted, and then it doesn't, and then you're stuck. I think that we in life feel like you want to find shortcuts to the success, and the problem is you can find those shortcuts, but when you take a shortcut, there's a repayment somewhere. My shortcut was a shortcut through reality TV into the entertainment industry. But then to get some sort of respect within the industry took another 10 years.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah, so it's a long process, right? And I now just believe that taking a shortcut on anything is the wrong idea. I think you have to take the long road in order to make it a success.
One thing that one idea I've been playing with recently is that, like, every time I speak to like a successful entrepreneur, someone who's like running a big business or sold a big business, I ask like, how long has the journey been? It's always at least 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, always.
And I'm always like, wow, that's actually kind of nice. Like, I've now been doing YouTube for 7 years. I did medicine for 8 years. It's like, okay, you know, this is actually a fairly long-term game.
This is your give-up period, though. It feels like, this is you did medicine. You're like, am I right?
That's
with
the
right
thing. And actually, a bunch of YouTubers are recently like quitting YouTube for various reasons, and a lot of them have been doing it for 7 years. There seems to be this like 7-year burnout period.
Yeah.
I think one problem that people have is that they don't stick at the same thing long enough to experience the real success of the thing. And they just sort of jump from one thing to another because they expect instantaneous results. But if you can get through that and just stick at something for long enough, then you get to the problem of like, I'm kind of successful in this one niche thing, but I've been doing it for a long time, and I wonder if there's more to life.
Yeah, but you have to stick it out, and you have to be persistent. The one thing that I would say, you know, there's an interesting thing about the NHS. You see a lot of people, especially with Brexit, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are leaving it, not working for it. Was there any part of you that felt a little bit guilty that you were going to leave?
Yeah, I still do to an extent. Because the NHS is really good. Like, having now traveled to America and stuff and other places, like, we've got it really good with the NHS.
Really, do we?
Yeah, obviously it's got its issues, but you know, anyone can just like rock up to a hospital and just get like a really good standard of care, arguably, for free. You have to pay for it. I really realized this when I was in med school. You know, we did a placement in Papworth, which is this like specialist cardiothoracic center, and this like incredibly intense like 14-hour operation that involved like 15 specialists for this guy to fit a fancy valve in his heart. And I asked, like, you know, who's paying for this? And I'm like, well, the NHS. I was like, whoa, this operation would have cost like several million in the US, and it was completely free for the dude under the NHS. That's absolutely sick. So I do still feel a bit guilty about that. One thing that a lot of doctors say is that the NHS runs on goodwill. You know, we will work longer hours and stuff and like accept worse working conditions than our friends working in the city. because it's the NHS, because it's state funded, because there's this like mission behind it, which is really cool. But as we're seeing with all the junior doctor strikes and stuff, goodwill doesn't pay the bills. And so I still do feel a bit guilty about it.
What needs to happen to make the NHS a place people don't want to leave?
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine in the context of a state-funded healthcare system. So I've had a couple of friends who've moved from the NHS to the US and are working in US hospitals and seem to enjoy it a lot more. And so a lot of the conversation we have is like, what are actually the differences between like what the working conditions are like in the US compared to here? Assuming you're in a nice hospital in like a nice city rather than a random hospital in a random city. And for example, in the US, they really care a lot about training. Like every day there's like a breakfast teaching session where the hospital will just provide free breakfast and some expert will be giving a talk about something that will help the doctors level up in their jobs. The doctors feel great about it because the whole point of like the training program is that you get trained up. Whereas in the NHS, your training is 1 hour a week on a Wednesday afternoon with some sandwiches from Tesco. And 1 hour a week, it doesn't really feel as if you're really learning stuff. It feels like you're doing the job and you're sort of expected to learn on your own time. Whereas in the US, they really take training very seriously. In the US, they give you subsidized hospital accommodation in like a really nice apartment building in New York, which you otherwise would not be able to afford. And so that makes people feel like, oh, wow, I'm actually living like a really comfortable life. Whereas here, it's like hospital accommodation is like kind of grim. It's like you've got to rent someplace nearby. You don't earn enough to rent a really nice place and stuff. Like I think it's things like that. I've got a friend who works in Singapore. He moved from the NHS to Singapore. And in Singapore, like they give you cash bonuses if you get really good feedback. So this friend of mine got like amazing feedback from all the nurses and stuff and got like a 15 grand cash bonus at the end of the year. And like, it's things like that. That's
just
like,
for positive feedback.
Yeah, just for positive feedback. I mean, he's really good, but like it ended up like having like the best positive feedback of the cohort.
Yeah.
But like it's things like that it's hard to imagine the NHS ever doing because all of this stuff is tied to money. The more money the system has, the more you can invest in training, invest in like nice accommodation, invest in nicer doctor's offices, invest in free coffee rather than paid coffee, invest in a cafeteria that gives you free food rather than having to pay for it. It's all these things that unfortunately require money, and money is one thing that the NHS doesn't really have. So it's really hard to imagine how it can how it can really be attractive to people without more money going into the system, which is why all these doctors are striking.
Do you think there's a chance that the NHS may die?
So people have been like doomsaying about the NHS since like 1948. So yeah, it's hard to say.
So the business turnover did 5 million last year. That's YouTube. You're the face of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So one would argue with you, right? Someone looking at you would say, well, why don't you just become really lean, cut loads of the employees so your overheads are much lower, and just take all the income yourself and not really build it, just keep it. And then you could have a great passive income. You could take home $1 million, $2 million quid a year to yourself.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that? $1 million, £2 million a year.
Yeah. I mean, I already do take home $1 million, £2 million a year. So good because our margins are 60%. So, 5 million revenue, we did about 2.6 million, 2.8 million profit.
But you want to build.
I do want to build. I think for me, I've realized that entrepreneurship is kind of like a really cool video game. So like a few days ago, it was Saturday and I just happened to be in London and I was thinking, okay, I've got a whole day free. I'm having lunch with a friend, but other than that, I've got a whole day free. What do I want to do? I can do anything I want. I was like, well, I could play some video games. I could, read a book, or I could try and figure out how to get a business from 5 to 10 million. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to a WeWork and just sit there all day, tinkering away on like Figma and Photoshop and like trying to do some journaling and sketching out to see like what's a cool product we can make to go from 5 to 10. And it was just really fun. And I realized it's kind of like a video game where you get to use your creativity, you get to work with people you like, you get to build cool stuff, kind of like Fortnite, but in real life. And the scoreboard is like real money that you can buy shit with. And like the more points you get in this video game, the more you can like, I don't know, go on fancy vacations or fly business class instead of economy, or like, take the fiance out for a nice date night on Valentine's Day.
But does that excite you though? Does that excite you? Being able to fly business class and things like that, does that go, oh, that feels you do? But once you've done it, surely you then go, well, I've kind of done it now, so it doesn't really make a difference. I see lots of very successful entrepreneurs and business leaders, start flying business or first, whatever it is, but then just start flying economy because they're like, well, you get to the same place anyway. It doesn't really matter. And then it becomes confusing. It's like, well, what are you building towards?
Yeah. I really like flying business. It's really nice.
I love your honesty.
I love it. Honestly,
so good.
it's so nice.
It's so good.
But also I've read a lot of books about like happiness and how to stay fulfilled and stuff. And I read a lot of studies around like money and happiness and all that stuff. Every every time I meet a rich person, I talk to them about, this link between money and happiness. So
Give me
I'd love to
statistics
get
on
that from
that.
you.
Give me statistics. Go on.
Some people would say that like beyond 70K, like per person in the household a year, money doesn't buy that much more happiness. Money does buy happiness if you use money to buy time, because time is very finite, and money, you can always make more money.
Explain that more.
So if, for example, you don't like doing the cleaning in your house and you can just outsource it to a cleaner for 2 hours a week, now you've bought back 2 hours of your time. If you don't like doing admin in your life and you can hire an assistant, you've just bought back 10 hours a week of your life. That sort of thing. If you fly business class, you buy back an hour in the queue because you get the VIP thing, and maybe you buy back, 20 minutes on the other end. And plus the experience of just doing it is just a bit nicer, so I can just get more work done. It sort of feels kind of nice. There's a guy called Ramit Sethi who's written a really good book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is a bit of a clickbaity title. But his whole thesis around money is that for different people, they have different kind of dials of what they want in their life. So there's like a luxury dial. There's like a convenience dial. There is a, fancy designer handbags dial. And for all of us, we have individual tastes in terms of like, what is the thing for us that actually does make us happier? So I've realized for me, convenience is a big one. If I could pay more to do something in a more convenient way, I'll take that any day, because I can use that convenience. It'll save me time. I can use that time to read a book, or like call my grandma, or like basically do whatever I want. So I've realized for me, like spending money on convenience and on saving time is actually really helpful.
Yeah.
But it's less about the stuff you can buy. I think for me, it's more about just the game of entrepreneurship at this point. Yeah.
But do you think people are just, if you're an entrepreneur, do you think it's within you? Do you think there are some people who just are and who aren't?
I think there are some people who have more of an appetite for risk,
yeah,
and less of an appetite for work-life balance. And for those people, that I sort of fits this entrepreneur kind of ideal. And I talk about this with my team a lot. There's like 13 of us, and 2 or 3 other people in our team are very sort of, they aspire to be entrepreneurs. But everyone else, the other 10, they're all like, you know what, I actually quite enjoy my 9 to 5, and I just want to go home and chill and have a good work-life balance and spend time with friends and family on the weekend and go on holidays every now and then. And as long as I enjoy my job, that's totally fine with me. I don't understand that particular approach, because for me, like, the autonomy and the freedom of being able to do my own thing, or like the fact that it's slightly risky also makes it more fun. Like, that really drives me, this desire for freedom and being just the ability to do whatever I want. Whereas for a lot of my team, it doesn't, and they're perfectly happy. So
what do you think the benefits are? So if you had to write down on a piece of paper, say, these are the benefits for all the positives that you see being an entrepreneur, but what are the negatives as well? What would you line out on a piece of paper? I
think by far the biggest positive is autonomy. Like when I had a real job, I would have to wake up.
Real job.
Well, yeah, when I had a real job, I would have to wake up every Monday morning at 7 o'clock to commute to work. I'd have to be there until like 6 p.m. and then I'd commute back, and then it'd be 7 p.m. If I want to cook and eat something, it's like, I don't know, 8:30. If I want to maybe go gym, it's like 9:30, and then it's time to sleep, and just repeat that cycle over and over again. So even though I quite enjoyed being a doctor, I was still sort of living for the weekend.
But humans, we love habit. We love routine.
Yeah.
So, but you don't really.
I mean, I do enjoy a routine, but I don't enjoy it. See, like, routine. I think routine is all well and good if you're choosing what the routine is. Like these days, I have full autonomy. I can do whatever I want, and I have chosen to have a routine where I wake up at 7:30, go to the gym, have a personal trainer for an hour, and then every Tuesday is my filming day, and every Monday is meetings. But that feels nice because I've chosen that routine. But if the medical rota coordinator were to impose a routine on me, to be like, okay, Ali, you have to be here from 9 till 6 Monday to Friday, and then next week you're on nights, and then the week after you're on evening shifts, and the week after you're on twilight shifts, and you're working that weekend and that weekend. Oh, and by the way, you can't take time off for your friend's wedding because actually we don't have any cover for that weekend and you're on call. Like, that was the thing about having a, quote, real job that I enjoyed the least. And I think that's the biggest benefit of entrepreneurship. You're more in control of your own life if you're an entrepreneur. Whereas if you're an employee, as much as you might like your job, you are at the, it's at the whim of your manager or at the whim of your boss. You could be fired at any moment. You could be asked to work extra hours. You could be told what to do. And there's not much you can do about it if you want to still have a job. So I think if you value that level of control, then entrepreneurship is great.
But then the problem is not all of us can be entrepreneurs. We need people to help build companies. So then if we're constantly giving the narrative that it's great to be this because you have control of your life, maybe is that a positive thing? I don't know. I think not everyone wants that level of, because to have that level of control requires a certain level of risk.
And, you know, for the 10 or so people in my team, they're like, actually, you know what? I don't want that amount of control. I'm very happy to be told where to turn up for a 9 to 5 job. You know, it's nice that I have flexibility because it's a remote job. But honestly, I don't really mind it. I don't really mind it. I think the single-minded desire for control is like a weird thing that entrepreneurs have that a lot of other people don't. I think that to me is the biggest benefit.
And do you think you're a control freak?
Do I think I'm a control freak?
Truthfully.
I think I'm a control freak about my own time. I'm not really a control freak about anything else in my life, but just there's something about kind of being told what to do and having to do something. That to me just feels like unless I've chosen that for myself, that's not really the way I would want to live. I think now that I'm engaged, you know, been in a relationship for a while, there is a level of autonomy that takes away. But it's a level of autonomy that I'm glad to trade. So I think, you know, I'm 29 now. My entire 20s has been about getting more fame, money, status, all that crap, getting more autonomy. But now I'm finding myself wanting to trade in the chips of autonomy for things like a family and kids and, you know, a physical office space with like physical team members rather than remote team members, you know, things like that. Yeah.
It's funny he says, I've always heard it, Socrates was always spoke about. He says Socrates has 2 levels of happiness, the lower level and the higher level. The lower level is what you suggested, fame, wealth, power, all the things you would think you want to achieve. And then actually when you achieve it, you go, well, I'm not content here. So you go for the higher level, which is loyalty, love, trust, friendship, all those kind of things.
All those things.
But it's tricky, right? Because it's, do you know what's funny? I always go back to this one thing that, Matt Damon Matt Damon, that philosopher. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck said. Matt Damon went on a show and said he's so happy that he won an Oscar when he was 21 years old for Good Will Hunting, because it made him realize how unimportant it was. And otherwise, he would have strived his entire life to get that, and then he would have got it and been like, "Hang on a second, this is not what it's meant to be." So, how do you teach people that actually in life it's really about just? I truly believe, having got married, I think true happiness is really about connections and love, and finding your passion, whatever that may be. That might be mowing the lawn, it might be painting, it might be running a business, whatever it is. But I think those are the most important things. But in our current world, people don't realize that. People are just striving for the wrong things all the time.
Yeah.
Can I ask a personal question?
Of course.
You spoken about your mum. Was your dad around when you were younger?
No, so my mum and dad divorced when I was like 1, so I never really knew my dad.
Really?
Yeah, so then my mum moved us to Africa, and so we grew up there for the first, like, from age 1 to 7. And yeah, it was just my mum, my grandma, and me and my brother. Really? And so I've never really known what it's like to have a dad. So it's almost like, I don't know, like someone who's colorblind has never seen color, and so it's like the concept of color just seems kind of weird to them. Similarly for me, so people sometimes ask, you know, do you feel sort of the lack of father figure in your life? I'm like, maybe, but I've never consciously thought that, because it's like you don't miss what you've never had, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That's really interesting, because a lot of people would say that when you don't have a father figure in your life, perhaps that manifests into different things, but maybe it hasn't with you. Yeah,
I think if anything, so I think me and my brother would not have had such an entrepreneurial spirit if we did have, you know, a dual income household, because my dad is also a doctor. He's working in Pakistan. But if we had like 2 incomes from doctors in the UK, there would have been a lot less of that drive to like, oh, we want to make money on the side, because we'd have been like squarely middle class at that point. I think also one area in which I do feel the absence of a father figure, I've realized this recently, is, for example, when my girlfriend is upset, I actually have no models of what it's like. Like, what does it look like for a man to comfort an upset woman? Like, I just have no idea what that looks like, because you tend not to see it in films. You tend not to see it in TV shows where like men are displayed as like bumbling idiots or something. And so I just have no idea what that looks like. And so with my girlfriend, I've sometimes asked her, being like, what did it look like when your dad comforted you when you were upset when you were younger? She says, oh, you know, he would give me a little sandwich, and he would, like, you know, say nice things to me, and he would be like, oh, you know, don't worry, honey, it's okay. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I just have no conception of what that looks like, and so I'm having to sort of learn these by trying to find scripts.
Almost. You realize that's quite robotic, right? It's sort of you
yeah.
In an interesting way, right? You're sort of an analyze. The good thing is that you're analyzing it you're trying to understand that emotion, right? It's almost like that side of the emotion has been sort of cut. when you just don't reach it? Because I totally agree with you. How do you learn?
Yeah, I think every new behavior feels robotic initially. It's like we had communication skills classes in medical school around how to break bad news. Now, obviously, if someone has got cancer or something and they're sitting in front of you, you feel the empathy for them. But there is a difference between feeling the empathy and having the appropriate communication skills to know how to respond. And, going through role plays and going through scripts and recognizing, the importance of giving them a warning shot, asking them to sit down, making sure there's a box of tissues. If they ask how long they've got to live, being able to respond with a phrase like, well, it's probably weeks rather than days, but weeks rather than months. It's a nice phrase. It's like, it gives some sense of like what the timeline is, but also it's not so specific because you can never be so specific about it. And it's like you learn those skills, which initially when you're first talking to patients, you're sort of running through a mental model in your head. Okay, I need to ask them about this and then this and then this, and now I need to do X, Y, Z. But with enough practice, it becomes second nature and you stop thinking about the structure anymore. I think similarly when it comes to, I really struggled with what does it mean to emotionally support a girlfriend? I don't know. But I asked her about it. I asked her what she would have liked in terms of emotional support. After the upset has passed, we're talking about it afterwards. I read some books about it, and I was like, okay, cool. There actually is a method here, and initially I have to think about the method, and increasingly I have to think about it a lot less because it's become more natural over time.
Do you think you're in touch with your emotional side?
Not really. Yeah, not really.
What do you think you lack in terms of emotions?
I think I very rarely experience negative emotions. I'm a very sort of tranquil kind of guy. But I think also what that means is that I very rarely experience very strong positive emotions. I'm sort of just in the middle. I'm just like, yeah, everything is just chill most of the time. I spoke to like a therapist about this for like a couple of months, because there are some specialists that there are some therapists that specialize in helping men in particular unlock their emotions. And one of his theories was that, if you don't feel an emotion in your body, it's because something is blocking that. And so there'll be moments where I'll be saying something and like my brother or a friend would say, hey, are you okay? Because you're sort of tearing up a bit. And I wouldn't realize that I'm tearing up a bit because internally I feel no different than I did a minute ago. But my eyes are watering. I'm like, whoa, that's kind of weird. And I mentioned this to the therapist and he was like, yeah, the body never lies. But sometimes the mind doesn't know what it's feeling because there's this disconnect. These people, so there are people that feel almost cut off from the neck down. It's like everything is happening in the head and nothing is happening in the body. But emotions will still bubble up and you just wonder why did I just tear up at that? And so I've been kind of exploring that with a therapist to see, this emotional unlock thing seems kind of cool. Like I'd love to at least have the option of experiencing the full range of human emotions.
So you don't really get sad?
No, not really.
But do you get euphoric?
I get euphoric?
Not euphoric, that's an extreme word, but do you get extremely happy?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing squash with some friends or it's like hanging out with the boys or, cuddling the girlfriend, yeah, I mean, it's happy. But I think, I don't know, like laughing and giggling with glee and joy like I maybe used to when I was a kid. I don't really do that anymore. I don't know if anyone does, but it's sort of hard to know what like euphoria feels like.
They always say that being less in touch with your emotions is a great skill to have as a doctor because you do have to, or working in medicine, because you have to deliver bad news.
Yeah.
And you almost have to, dare I say, you have to have that sort of sociopathic sort of no empathy. You have to have empathy, but you have to separate yourself, as you said. But then, is there sometimes a danger that when you've been taught for so long to separate empathy, so you go, right, put it in a box here, that actually sometimes you can't bring them back together again. Like how actors, I always sit with actors talk about it, that when they've played so many characters for so long that they forget kind of who they are themselves. When you've been taught for so long that you have to, when you're delivering bad news or delivering a diagnosis or whatever it is, you have to separate it. It's quite hard to then bring that back into normal life sometimes.
Yeah.
Or am I completely wrong there?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I was only a doctor for 2 years, so I don't think the training, like, I don't think I did it for long enough for it to bleed into my real life. Although, so my housemate, back when I had a real job, she was also a doctor and she was very in touch with her emotions. And she would find it incredibly difficult when a patient died.
Wow.
And I would find it difficult when a patient died, but it wouldn't like floor me. It wouldn't like, it wouldn't cause the same level of upset for me as it did for her.
What emotion do you sit most comfortably in then?
It's a hard question to answer. Like tranquility,
Mm.
joy, maybe. I mean, I think most things I do, I find a way to make it fun.
You're
I find a way
such
to enjoy the
you're a
process.
bright person. You give off that energy.
Oh, nice. I'm glad.
No, you really
Yeah.
do, in a great way.
Yeah, so I try to bring that to everything because my whole thing is like if I'm doing anything at all and I feel a sense of like I'll always kind of remember that no, I can choose how I approach the situation and just decide to brighten up a bit about it. Just choose to approach it with more optimism and more gratitude and more grace, which is just makes it just feel way nicer.
Ali, we end the podcast with 8 questions. Are you ready for it?
Let's go.
What's a saying or phrase that always makes you smile or cheers you up?
Something around everything will work out in the end, so there is never any reason to be worried.
That's great. Ali, I love that. Okay, best compliment anyone's ever given you?
The best compliments I get are when people come up to me and they say that my videos or my book has changed their life in some way. So I was working in a coffee shop earlier today, and 2 people spontaneously came up to me and they were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it's you. Like, thank you so much. Your videos about studying helped me get through my exams," or like your this thing video about this thing helped me start a business. It's like if there's this random ass video that I could make in my bedroom that has genuinely helped someone get a first-class degree or get through their GCSEs or start a business, that to me is like the best compliment because it's like, oh, my work actually had an impact.
What scares you most about yourself?
What scares me most about myself? Oh, what scares me most is that I think I enjoy my work so much that I'm always at risk of over-prioritizing work and under-prioritizing health and relationships. And when I look at other kind of successful entrepreneurs that I know, like a lot of them have
done the same thing,
fucked up their personal lives for the sake of their professional life.
Completely.
And they didn't need to make more money.
Yeah,
like, what the hell are you doing? So I need to keep on checking myself to make sure I'm not trying to make more money at the expense of my actual life.
But do you think that's because they're on this constant search for something?
Yeah, maybe.
You know,
the ones I know, like there are a few entrepreneurs I know who are like very rich and successful and also happy. And they tend to be the ones with a wife and kids, for whatever that's worth.
I think it's true. You're getting married as well, which is incredible. And I honestly, for me, who was someone completely obsessed with work and success in whatever ways it was, marriage has taught me balance.
Nice.
Massively. And I think, Ali, for you, it will do the same thing. We're on that path where, and your drive, you can feel it coming from you, which is a great thing. I admire it massively. That's what inspires me. I love connecting with people like that. But I think when you get married, you'll go, okay.
Yeah.
And
I can chill out a bit.
I think so, in a great way, which you'll become hugely passionate still and hugely driven, but you suddenly realize, there are other things in life which are important. And that for me is what I realized. That's why I think marriage is a good thing.
Nice.
We don't become complete sociopaths. Okay. When was the last time you cried?
I was at the British Library yesterday, and they've got this great exhibition about fantasy books. And fantasy books have played a huge role in my life growing up, like Harry Potter, and then like later, the Lord of the Rings stuff, and Brandon Sanderson, favorite author of all time, amazing fantasy books. I see you've got some on the shelves here. And just like walking through this this like exhibition in the British Library and seeing sort of like the history of how the fantasy genre evolved, weirdly brought tears to my eyes. I was just like, what the hell's happening? It was really cool. Because there was like this like old manuscript of like Harry Potter, and there was like this like Beowulf translation or something. It was like it's so cool seeing like this genre of books that has had such an impact on me. Damn, I'm tearing up thinking about it, like talking about it now, where it's like I can just walk through and see how it all came together, and it's just like really nice and heartwarming. And so I cried a bit then.
That's amazing.
Yeah, would recommend the fantasy exhibition at the British Library.
Why does it make you tear up? Because I can see you tearing up about it. That's incredible.
I don't know. I think it's like I think when I was young, like Harry Potter in particular was such a big thing, and increasingly like and recently, like since university, it was like the Brandon Sanderson books, and even like whenever I study for my exams, I've got like the Lord of the Rings soundtrack playing in my headphones. So I think it's like at every like major moment of my life from like age 11 onwards, there's been some sort of fantasy book or movie or series or soundtrack that's sort of been at its sort of base, and I don't know, it's nice to look back on.
What is it about fantasy that you love?
The thing I love most, I think, is the story of someone. Maybe there's a parallel here. The story of like someone starting off like a total noob and then becoming really powerful over time. And there's something like really cool about that coming of age thing, and just feeling that sense of I love those sort
Anything
of
is
coming of age
possible.
stories. Anything is possible. Like you can start off small in like a little village, and you can just get really powerful, and like suddenly the world opens up. I wonder if I feel like there's parallels with my own life there.
It feels like it, right?
Yeah.
Ali, by the way, I love that you got emotional about that.
Yeah.
It's so
Holy
cool,
shit.
man.
This is what I get emotional about, weirdly.
It's so, you don't get emotional about death. You
I
don't get
know.
emotional about
I get emotional about Harry Potter. Don't cancel me, please. Sorry.
It's so good. I love it. What do I get emotional by? That's probably I get emotional when people are proud. When you see, but when proudness, when someone's proud of someone or they do something that makes themselves proud.
Yeah.
That for me is that makes me go every time.
Nice.
Especially do with father figures, which again probably is saying something.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, probably when dads are proud of their sons. There's a
Yeah.
great clip which gets me every single time. I don't know if you know who Tom Brady is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, American quarterback. He gets asked a question by a kid in the crowd. He says, "Who's your hero?" And Tom Brady, gonna make me go down. So it's we're gonna cry together. And Tom Brady says, "Tom Brady, don't even know him, right?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, who's my hero? My dad." And then he starts choking up, and he's trying to say when he goes, "My dad," and it's an amazing moment.
Oh.
Yeah, it's an incredible moment. That for me,
Oh, nice.
everything.
Love that.
What's something you can't let go of?
Okay, I think I can't let go of my desire to want to teach people stuff. And I do sometimes wonder if what's beneath that is my desire to be liked by others. And I think kind of being a good teacher is like a pretty reasonable way to be liked. There's a quote which is, I think it was from JP Morgan of all people, which is that, a man always has two reasons for doing something, a good reason and the real reason. And so my good reason for wanting to be a teacher is because it's nice to kind of share ideas and like help people and stuff. But is the real reason just because I want people to like me and sort of being sort of teaching them something is a way for them to like me? I don't know, maybe.
What's something that you'd be embarrassed for people to know you like or want?
It's hard for me to feel embarrassed about a lot of stuff because I just sort of own it. But one genre of books that I really like is paranormal romance. It's great. It's so good. So think like Twilight, but like steamier. I maybe would have been embarrassed about it before, but like now I'm just like, yeah, it's just great. People should read it.
I love that. I want people to really, because we all have insecurities growing up. All of us, right? Doesn't matter how powerful, how strong, or how confident we seem, or whatever it is. We all have those insecurities, and when you're talking about it, you're talking about insecurities or your insecurities. What's good to know is that we get through those things, and we start to love ourselves a little bit more as we get older. Being a kid is sometimes pretty hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
When did you stop being embarrassed, do you think?
When did I stop being embarrassed? I think actually weirdly making YouTube videos helped with that. When I started making YouTube videos, I realized that, when I sort of share things about myself that feel a bit embarrassing to me, weirdly that really connects with people. And they love that shit because then people are sending emails being like, that story that you shared about how you were unconfident about this thing, that really resonated with me. And I'm like, oh shit, like everyone has these sorts of feelings, and so I like kind of being open about things that sound slightly weirder, or that I would have been embarrassed about maybe 10 years ago.
What turns you off?
What turns me off is when people gossip about others. Like, there's always something about that really like makes my blood boil. Especially if it happens in my team. I'm like, for fuck's sake, like, have you told the other person? I was like, no, okay, cool. Who's going to tell them, me or you? That kind of thing.
That's great.
Yeah, and if it's with friends, I try and cut off that conversation ASAP.
What turns you on?
I really like it when people are very passionate about something. Whether it's like, I don't know, a certain genre of books or like a musical instrument or like a business or like literally anything. Like there's something about someone who's like really passionate about something, especially if the thing is slightly weird, that I just feel is like, that's really admirable. That's really cool.
What do you like most about yourself?
What I like most about myself is that I am a generally tranquil guy. Like there's almost nothing that will sort of make me have a bad day, as it were. Like it's hard for me to even imagine that concept of having a bad day because every day is a gift and all that stuff. And I think I don't think it was always like that. I think a lot of it has come through reading books about happiness and stoicism and stuff, and really recognizing that there is so much of our own emotions that we actually do have control over. A lot of our emotions is the story that we tell ourselves. And so maybe this speaks to kind of my lack of emotionality, but I just I'm really glad that I'm just a generally chill and tranquil and joyful guy with most things that I do.
Last question for a bonus one. What is your favorite swear word?
Is twat a swear word?
Yes.
I really like twat because Americans don't get it. You're like, oh man.
Ali,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so fun.
It was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate
Thanks for having me.
it. That was amazing.
Good stuff.
Oh.